Dying lion begged for help. What this man did shocked everyone. The sun was slowly setting behind the horizon, painting the sky over Oak Creek in warm orange hues. Jack Wilson was walking along the familiar forest trail after a day at his auto repair shop. The cool autumn wind rustled through the leaves of the ancient oaks. The evening silence was only broken by the sound of his footsteps on the fallen leaves. Jack often chose this path home to unwind from the hustle and bustle of the city. However, that day, Jack felt an unusual sense of unease. As the clouds twisted into strange shapes and birds flew low to the ground, the wind picked up, carrying unfamiliar scents. Jack noticed that the forest animals were behaving oddly. Squirrels darted away swiftly as he approached. A deer he encountered on the trail stood frozen, and even the crows in the trees had fallen silent. A palpable tension filled the air. Suddenly, a strange sound echoed from afar, resembling a moan. Jack paused and listened, and the sound repeated, this time drawing closer. A chill ran down Jack's spine, sensing that the sound didn't belong to any typical forest creature. The thick tree canopies barely filtered the last rays of the setting sun, casting shadows that grew longer and denser with each passing moment. Every bush and tree took on a menacing silhouette, heightening the eerie atmosphere. Feeling uneasy, Jack quickened his pace, striving to stay on the well-trodden path. A sudden gust of wind carried a scent entirely foreign to the forest, a heady, animalistic odor reminiscent of zoo cages. The hair on the back of Jack's neck stood on end as he sensed that something strange and sinister was unfolding around him. Out of the corner of his eye, a shadow flickered, revealing a head too large to belong to any local animal. It moved slowly like a wounded creature. Jack slowed his step, peering into the dim light. His heart pounded in his chest. His hands grew sweaty with anxiety. The dry leaves underfoot rustled treacherously with every step. Jack tried to walk as quietly as possible. Somewhere nearby, a branch snapped. The man quickly turned his head toward the sound. In the twilight, everything seemed distorted and unreal. Low clouds blocked the last rays of the sun. The forest grew even darker. Jack took out his phone to turn on the flashlight. The screen showed no signal. This was strange. Usually, the connection worked fine here. A new sound made him flinch. It was like the heavy, labored breathing of a large animal. The sound grew closer, sending a chill down Jack's spine. He froze as large eyes gleamed in the darkness. A massive silhouette emerged between the trees, unlike any local animal. Moonlight revealed a huge head with a thick mane. It was a real African lion in the Wyoming forest. Instinctively wanting to run, Jack slowly backed away. However, the lion didn't appear aggressive. Instead, it looked exhausted and weak. The lion swayed as if it was hard for him to stand. His fur was dirty and matted. His ribs were clearly visible under his skin. Old scars could be seen on his side. This was clearly not a wild animal, but someone's captive who had managed to escape. Jack noticed a worn collar on the lion's neck. The metal gleamed dully in the faint light. The old collar around the lion's neck showed he had been in captivity for some time, but how he ended up in the wilderness was unclear. The lion moaned, his eyes filled with pain and exhaustion, replacing Jack's fear with compassion. Instead of a fearsome predator, Jack saw a suffering animal in need. Slowly, he removed his backpack, avoiding sudden movements as the lion watched him warily. He took out a turkey sandwich he hadn't eaten, unwrapped it, and placed the largest piece on the ground before backing away, noticing a glimmer of interest in the lion's eyes. His heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might leap out of his chest. The lion sniffed at the food. The predator's movements were slow and cautious. He approached the offering, constantly glancing at Jack. Hunger overcame fear, and the lion quickly swallowed the food offered. There was an almost pleading expression on his face. Jack took out a bottle of water, fashioned an improvised bowl by unscrewing the cap, and filled it before stepping back. The lion eagerly drank every drop, and after eating and drinking, his behavior noticeably changed. His gaze sharpened, his body relaxed, and he took a few steps aside, seemingly inviting Jack to follow. Knowing the lion needed veterinary care at a nearby clinic, Jack tried to lead him toward the city, but the lion consistently moved in the opposite direction. Suppressing his panic, Jack followed the determined animal through thick, darkening bushes. The lion walked confidently ahead, frequently glancing back with a purposeful look, clearly knowing where he was going and wanting to show Jack something important. The twilight was deepening by the minute. Jack stumbled over tree roots, barely seeing the road. The lion moved slowly as if adjusting to his pace. Sometimes he would stop, waiting for Jack to overcome particularly difficult parts of the path. They had been walking for about half an hour. The forest was gradually thinning out. A strange mix of metal, old straw, rust, and animal odors filled the air, heightening Jack's unease as he sensed they were nearing the reason the lion was in the woods. Suddenly, the forest opened to reveal an old dirt road overgrown with tall grass. The moon emerged from behind clouds, casting a ghostly light on an abandoned area with dilapidated buildings. Faded, torn posters fluttered in the wind, and creaking metal structures stood ominously. Before them lay a deserted circus, a once vibrant tent now pitiful, its torn canvases hanging from rusted poles as scraps of old programs blew across the ground. The lion quickened his pace toward the circus buildings. His tail was tense, ears pressed to his head. Jack followed, feeling each step echoing in the oppressive silence. Broken glass crunched underfoot. The unpleasant smell was getting stronger. The metallic taste in the air was now mixed with the heavy stench of unclean cages. Jack heard faint sounds, moans, and rustling coming from the darkness. His heart tightened with dread as the lion halted before a row of shadowed cages, its eyes glowing in the moonlight. Jack turned on his phone's flashlight, revealing a horrifying scene inside the dirty, rusty enclosures. Animals languished. Exhausted tigers lay motionless, apathetic bears swayed, and monkeys huddled desperately to stay warm. As Jack moved along the cages, the horror deepened. In a distant corner, 2 elephants were chained heavily, their dry, cracked skin and lifeless eyes clearly showing that the circus owners had abandoned them to a grim fate. The cages were filthy with no food or water. Some animals looked sick. Others are so weak they can barely move. The lion had brought him here for a reason. He was seeking help, not just for himself. At that moment, the lion let out a quiet growl as if confirming Jack's thoughts. His gaze was filled with unspoken pleas. He had fulfilled his mission, delivering the man to his suffering companions. Now everything depended on Jack. Jack quickly pulled out his phone. His hands trembled with excitement and anger. Luckily, there was a weak signal here. He dialed the rescue service, trying to speak clearly and calmly. The dispatcher listened carefully to his confused story about the abandoned circus and the neglected animals. As he gave the location's coordinates, a faint moan from the farthest cage made him shudder. A tigress was trying to stand but couldn't hold herself up. Jack knew that many of the animals needed urgent help. Every minute of delay could cost them their lives. While waiting for the rescuers, he decided to inspect the area. In a utility room, Jack found leftover food and barrels of water. He systematically provided the animals with what little they had, some too weak to eat. After what felt like hours, the sound of approaching vehicles broke the silence. Police officers, veterinarians, and rescue workers arrived, their floodlights revealing the circus's devastation. The rescue operation began immediately, with vets in protective suits examining the animals and setting up nutrient drips. Rescuers used hydraulic tools to cut the rusted cage locks, especially struggling with the elephants whose chains had deeply wounded them, requiring special equipment to free the giants. Veterinarians immediately began treating their wounds while transport was prepared to move them. In the circus office, the police found documents that shed light on the situation. The owners, facing severe financial problems, decided to close the circus. However, instead of ensuring the animals received proper care, they simply took all the money and disappeared, leaving their charges to die slowly. The paperwork revealed numerous violations, including fake veterinary certificates, falsified financial reports, and missing permits. The owners had cut costs on everything from food to medical care, leaving the animals in dire conditions for years. The all-night rescue operation saw specialized trucks transport the weakened animals to rehabilitation centers, some requiring stretchers. By dawn, only empty cages remained as silent witnesses to the cruelty. Zeus, the lion who had led Jack to the circus, was the sole escapee and a former arena star. Thanks to Jack's kindness, Zeus began his long recovery before being moved to a sanctuary. Within a week, all the animals were safely relocated to specialized rehabilitation centers. Each animal received the necessary medical care and gradually began to recover. After treatment, they were relocated to sanctuaries and zoos nationwide. A month later, the circus owners were arrested in a small town in Mexico, carrying a large sum of money. They were swiftly brought to trial for animal cruelty and fraud, receiving harsh sentences that sent a clear message to the industry. This case sparked a large-scale investigation, uncovering a network of illegal circuses that systematically violated animal welfare regulations. Across the country, inspections of traveling circuses began. Authorities tightened requirements for animal housing conditions and increased oversight to ensure compliance with regulations. The story of the animal's rescue received widespread attention in the press. Local and national TV channels aired reports from the scene. Newspapers hailed Jack's heroic actions, crediting his decisive efforts with saving more than 30 animals from a slow death. In his hometown, residents began to recognize him on the streets, approaching to shake his hand and express their admiration for his bravery. The town's mayor even awarded him a certificate of honor in acknowledgement of his courageous deeds. The Animal Protection Society honored Zeus with a special award for his courage and compassion. After completing an extensive rehabilitation program, the lion was relocated to a spacious sanctuary in Texas. A year later, Jack received a letter from the sanctuary accompanied by photos. In the images, Zeus looked completely transformed, healthy and strong. His mane was thick and beautiful once again, and there was a spark of freedom in his eyes, reflecting the life he now enjoyed in his new home. Gazing at the photos, Jack realized that following the lion that evening had been the right decision. Despite his fear and uncertainty, he trusted his instincts, ultimately saving many lives. Zeus's story, along with those of the other rescued animals, became a beacon of hope, demonstrating that a single person can change the fate of many. What an incredible story! If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment below. See you in the next video.